In this video, we will go over all of the reasons, all of the solid arguments why the price of Bitcoin is gonna increase in the long term, and I promise you will be persuaded to buy even more Bitcoin at any given price as long as it is below 100k. So let's get started. Yeah, and before we begin, my name is Arseny. Welcome you on the Vesper channel. Don't forget to smash the like button and follow this channel for the new videos, because in crypto, information is everything, and who is the first to get information usually wins. Let's get started. Now, the price of anything is determined based on two things: the supply and the demand. And depreciation of anything can happen in two cases. The first case is when the supply decreases, and the second case is when demand increases. So this video will be split into two parts. In the first part, we will break down all of the reasons why the supply for Bitcoin is decreasing. And in the second part, we're gonna talk about the demand and why there is greater demand for Bitcoin every single year. Let's go. Now, firstly, let's talk about the supply. So, as we know, the number of Bitcoins out there is limited. To be precise, it is 21 million. And at the moment, there is already 91% of all Bitcoins mined, and they are in circulating supply. So the rest of the Bitcoins, which is 9%, they're gonna be mined over 100 years. Like the last Bitcoin is gonna be mined by 2140. So this makes it different from other assets like stocks, cash, dollar, real estate, and even gold, because gold is limited, and we know that it is limited, but we do not know for sure how much gold is left there to be mined, unlike Bitcoin. Now, also Bitcoin by definition is a deflationary asset because of the Bitcoin halving. So every 4 years, or 210,000 mined blocks, the rate of the provision of new Bitcoins drops down by 50%. And this halving event is really significant because it marks another drop in the rate of new Bitcoins being produced as it approaches its finite supply. Also, what's interesting is that after each halving, and so far there were only 3 halving events, the price of the Bitcoin surges. Okay, so the first halving event occurred in November of 2012. And after that, there was an increase from about 12 to nearly $1,150 within just 1 year. The second halving event occurred in July of 2016, and the price back then was around $650. But in December of 2017, so in like 1 year and a half, the price surged to just under $20,000. And then in May of 2020, so at the third halving event, the price increased by over 100%. To be more precise, by 120%. So, as you can see, Bitcoin is really different from many other assets because the supply is very fixed. We know exactly how many Bitcoins are out there and by what date the supply of Bitcoin is gonna be ended. Now let's talk about why the demand for Bitcoin is going up every single year, if not month, and if not day. So the first reason is that people are looking for an asset that is going to hedge against the inflation of the US dollar. So since the gold standard was removed in 1971 by Richard Nixon, the amount of circulating dollars in the US economy has increased. So when this golden standard was in place, it meant that you would come to a bank and you would give a bank a bar of gold. Let's say you gave 1 kilogram of gold, and in return you will get the cash. So you would get like $20,000. I don't know what was the price of gold back then. And then at any time you could come back to bank, and actually not only you, but every single American could come back to the bank, and they could claim back their gold that they gave as a collateral, and they would provide cash and get this gold. So every single dollar was backed by a piece of gold. But after the standard was removed, it allowed the Fed to print out as many dollars as they want. Like, there is no really restrictions. And that's why between the year 1975 and just before the COVID hit the American economy, the number of circulating dollars has increased from 275 billion to over $4 trillion. In just like 51 years. Yeah, the total money supply has gone from 4 trillion in March of 2020 to over 6.5 trillion right now in 2022. And actually, this provision of money was the biggest ever rescue package in the US history. So the reason why government does that is because there is a recession, there is very high unemployment, and so the Fed reduces the interest rate and provides more money into the economy. It pours in more money into the economy, trying to boost it, trying to stimulate the economy. But what we get instead is the inflation that is really skyrocketing right now and very low interest rates in banks. So as of 2022, the inflation hit its 40-year highest number. It is over 8% right now. Because of such high numbers in inflation, investors are looking for other assets. And right now, Bitcoin is really trending. Everyone is talking about it. And so that's why retail investors, like regular individuals like you and me, are now shifting their focus from saving accounts in banks to something different. And right now, everyone is talking about Bitcoin. Everyone is talking about the returns that early investors got from it. And that's why the demand for Bitcoin is going up. And this very high supply of money, of US dollars, not only has been causing a very high inflation, but also it has decreased the price of money, which has decreased interest rates. So just think about this for a moment. The inflation right now is 8%, and the average interest rates in US banks, actually the best high yield saving account rates, can give you maximum 1.2%, which is still leaving you with 6.75% loss every single year, and this compounds. Whereas if you lend out Bitcoin, you can be getting up to 6.5, 7, 8%. And actually comment down below if you want me to make a video about the best saving accounts for cryptocurrency, including stablecoins and of course Bitcoin. Comment down below. Now, the next reason for the growth in demand for Bitcoin is blockchain technology mass adoption and also the great influx of new Bitcoin users. Now, this is just the rough estimate, but at the moment there are only 106 million owners of Bitcoin wallets, and only 22% of all Americans actually own Bitcoin. But when it comes to stocks, around 58% of all Americans own stocks, which means that there is like at least 2x, 3x room for growth of the number of crypto users. And whenever a new user comes in, he purchases Bitcoin, and which supply actually decreases every single year. And this obviously pushes the price up. And it's also really interesting that 89% of Americans have heard about Bitcoin, but only 22% actually know about it. And if we refer back to the most famous marketing model that is called AIDA, and usually marketers and people who work in sales use it for creating the funnels. The first stage of the funnel is awareness, the next one is interest, next one is desire, and the last one is action. And if we look at the Bitcoin funnel right now, 90% of people know about it, so they have heard about it. And every single year there is more and more interest because Bitcoin doesn't disappear, it matures, it appreciates. And we can expect that now the interest is gonna grow, the desire then is gonna follow the growth in interest, and this is gonna lead to more actions and more users joining the blockchain. Now, companies like Louis Vuitton, Tesla, Twitter, Facebook that are really bullish on cryptocurrency and that have made a lot of claims about beginning to accept cryptocurrency as a means of payment, they provide us with a hint that the mass adoption of Bitcoin is gonna happen in the next 10 years or so. Now, the next reason why the demand for Bitcoin is growing is that it is actually a very good tool for diversification. Unlike stock market, S&P 500 index, unlike cash and real estate, Bitcoin does not really follow the market. So there was a study done on correlation of Bitcoin and other big assets. You can see here that its correlation between, for example, S&P 500, which represents the US stock market, is very low. It's like less than 30%. And the correlation of the United States dollar index is actually negative, which means that when the dollar depreciates, Bitcoin appreciates, and that's why it is really good at hedging against inflation. And the correlation of Bitcoin with gold is actually 10%, which is like very low. And this tells a good story. This tells a story that Bitcoin is a great tool for diversification, and in the future it might attract more conventional investors that will diversify their portfolio, like for example Kevin O'Leary did. in the few recent months when he claimed that 20% of his portfolio is right now in crypto, but before he was actually Bitcoin minimalist and he was criticizing crypto a lot. So in the future, I believe that more institutional investors are going to join crypto, and they're going to use crypto not as a primary source for their investment, but rather as a tool for diversification. Now, the next reason for the greater demand for Bitcoin is decentralization. So all other assets, real estate, stocks, bonds, different futures, essentially everything that is not crypto is centralized, meaning that it is controlled by a third party who actually can make decisions on banning some users and deciding to exclude you from owning this, from the ownership of this asset. But with Bitcoin, it is completely decentralized, meaning that there is no central authority. And not only this instills a lot of trust into the system, but also it provides a lot of security benefits. For example, let's say that there is a big natural disaster and you own a house somewhere in, I don't know, somewhere in the place where there is a very high frequency of earthquakes, for example, or like tsunamis and stuff. And basically your wealth, if you invested all of your money into the real estate, can be wiped out within a day or so. Another thing could be a war conflict. For example, I'm from Ukraine. My father is in real estate development. Actually, the company is one of the greatest ones. It's called DIM, and it's one of the greatest residential real estate development companies in Kiev. It's in top 5. And essentially all of the wealth that was there and that he used to own became worthless just overnight because of a crazy Russian president. And the physical damage also applies to commodities. I would like to include the Michael Saylor interview, who is the CEO of MicroStrategy. It's one of the biggest investors and holders of cryptocurrency, of Bitcoin. And yeah, I'm gonna put it on here now.
Into a bank in Frankfurt in 1900. What if you put it in the largest bank in Japan, in Tokyo, in 1900? Name a city you could have, and a bank you could have put it in 1900 that would still be there in the year 2000. It's a short list, by the way.
Yeah.
London, Switzerland, Zurich, New York. You would have failed in Paris, Berlin, anywhere in Eastern Europe. You would have failed in Moscow. You would have lost it all in Beijing. You would have lost it in Tokyo. You would have lost it all anywhere south of the Rio Grande.
Yeah. And in the
You would have
US?
lost it pretty much everywhere in Africa.
So the point he was making is that if you put in all of your gold, all of your cash into the bank vault in the beginning of 20th century, because of the Second World War, a lot of the cities, a lot of the major big capitals were just demolished, and all of your wealth could be lost. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, it is decentralized, meaning that it is run and it is maintained by different computers that are spread all around the globe. And if one country is affected, I don't know, if actually like 50% of the countries are affected, still it's gonna be run. If 90% of the countries is gonna be affected, still it's gonna be maintained. I mean, there is a possibility of 51% attack, but this is for another video. But the point is that it is much more safe because it's decentralized. It's like in the cloud, you know? And also another point that Michael Saylor made in this interview later is about the logistics of Bitcoin. And yeah, I'm gonna put this on as well.
Gold network, and we want to move money. So I put $100 million in gold and I want to move it around. Well, it's 25 basis points every time I move it around the world. If I move it once a quarter, it's 1% bleed a year. If I move it once a quarter. Okay. If I mine it, it's 2% bleed a year. That gets me to 3% bleed a year. Divide that into 70 and every 22 years, that's the half-life of gold. Energy on a gold network has a half-life of 22 years.
So in terms of logistics, if you want to bring your gold stockpile from one country to another, you will pay a lot in taxes. And also you gotta be caring about the safety of this transportation. If you're transporting like 10 kilograms of gold, which is, I don't know, which is really a lot. The thing is that not only it's gonna be, you're gonna pay taxes, but also you will be really stressed about the safety of this transportation. And also you gotta store it somewhere. You cannot just store it at your home, and you cannot just like go somewhere, you know, to Bali and take a bar of gold with you. But with Bitcoin, you can access it anywhere on the planet as long as you have access to internet and as long as you have access to your phone. And that's why decentralization is so much useful, and that's why it's so cool. And now, for example, if the government decides to block your money, they cannot do it again. Because what? Because it is decentralized. The next point is going to be about volatility. So the volatility of Bitcoin, if we look how it was a few years ago, it was much more volatile. And the volatility depends on how many holders of Bitcoin there is out there. Let's say that there is one person who controls 10% of Bitcoin. I mean, these guys actually, there are a lot of them. They're called whales, the ones that have a lot of Bitcoin, and they can pump or they can dump Bitcoin anytime they want. So they can change the price just by selling a lot or buying a lot. And I mean, they have power only as long as they have a lot of Bitcoin. But as more people join the network, the percentage of Bitcoin that they actually hold, it decreases. And over a long period of time, the quality or the Bitcoin ownership distribution is going to become more equal. And that's why this volatility is probably still gonna be there, but at least it's gonna decrease, and Bitcoin will become much more stable cryptocurrency than it is right now. And actually the proof of that is that after Luna crashed, a lot of altcoins, most of the altcoins that are in the list of top 10 altcoins, the price have decreased by 3 times, 4 times, and with Bitcoin it's less than 50%. And this stability will attract more conventional investors, those who are not actually early adopters and those who will join the crowd later. And yeah, this just increases the demand for Bitcoin. More people will join the network. Now, the last reason why the demand for Bitcoin is going to be increasing in the future is regulation. Crypto a few years ago was described as really a wild west by Gary Gensler, who is teaching a blockchain course in MIT. And right now he's a chairman of SEC. And indeed, there were just no rules, no taxes, no control by the government. And because of that, the number of scams and number of different hackings that were taking place was just skyrocketing. In 2020, scammers took over $8 billion. And in 2021, they took around $14 billion. So this number has increased 2 times. And on March 9, 2022, President Biden signed an executive order on ensuring responsible development of digital assets. And this is another big and huge step towards regulation. Now, why regulation is important? For some people, for some retail investors, regulation might seem as not a big deal and something that actually you would not really like to do, because if something is regulated, there are more third parties involved, and now cryptocurrency seems to be less decentralized. But again, it is completely decentralized because government has no control over the blockchain. But the government is going to track the transactions in blockchain and is going to force people to pay taxes on these transactions and on capital gains. And this just means that the whole crypto space is going to be much more safe for people. Less people will be losing money, and as a result, there will be less FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt spread around by people who lost $100 and now they're just saying that cryptocurrency is all scam and you should never buy Bitcoin. And this will just make the general sentiment better for cryptocurrency. But the biggest advantage that regulation is going to bring for crypto is institutional investors that will actually join the game now. Right now, there are only a few companies, a few big companies that have invested in Bitcoin, but very big investment institutions like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, JP Morgan, they do not really invest in crypto. They make a lot of claims about that, but I haven't heard that they've bought a few thousand, or actually, I mean, these guys can buy a few million Bitcoins. And what's holding them back is just the lack of clarity of the rules in this industry. And as the space is getting more regulated, it's going to become more clear, and they will join the game. Cool, that was it. Now let's go for a very short summary. So the price of any asset in the world is determined by its supply and demand. So our goal, if you want the price of anything to appreciate, our goal is to increase the demand and decrease the supply. With Bitcoin, the supply is very limited, unlike most of other assets that exist out there, like real estate, gold, stocks, cash. And the rate of provision of new Bitcoins gets halved every 4 years. And by 2140, the last Bitcoin is going to be mined, and after that, no more Bitcoins will be produced. In terms of the demand, there are actually more factors. The first one is skyrocketing inflation rates in the US. Right now, the inflation is hitting 8%, which is really horrifying for most of the investors. Now, the interest rates in traditional sectors, like in banking saving accounts, is less than 1%, and it does not hedge investors against inflation. That's why they're looking for other assets, and Bitcoin is just one of them. Next positive shifter of the demand is the inflow of new users and mass adoption of Bitcoin. More companies are joining blockchain game, more companies are leveraging this technology, more people are getting convinced that Bitcoin is something really legit and something that is going to increase in value over the long term. Also, blockchain by its design, by its nature, is decentralized, meaning that it's much more safe, it's much more convenient than all other assets like gold or just cash. Now, the next reason for the greater demand for the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is that it is getting less volatile, and therefore it is less vulnerable to whale manipulations. And because it is getting more mature, there is more trust in it and more people are going to join it. And the last reason is the regulation. Cryptocurrency industry is getting more regulated, and as a result, more institutional investors are joining Bitcoin, which is really shifting the demand to the right and increasing the demand and increasing the price for Bitcoin. That was it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please smash the like button and follow the channel. Also check out the Vesper Telegram announcement channel. And my name was Arseny, and see you in the next videos. Bye.